Happy Creative New Year, guys! Thanks a lot for your support and feedback throughout 2019. Your comments, likes and shares really help us produce better content each year. In 2019, we released 58 tutorials with over 24 hours of total playtime, and you guys watched over 240,000 hours of our content, which is a mind-blowing 10,000 days or 28 years. You also gave us over 90,000 likes and 4,000 comments last year. To kick off 2020, in this video I'm going to share with you our team's top 10 graphic design trend predictions. You can find the time codes in the description below if you wish to jump to a specific topic. Most trends we picked have been around for a while, but they are gaining momentum and we expect to see a lot of them in 2020. Also, don't forget that being aware of trends is crucial, however, they shouldn't restrict your creative ideas. Using liquids and fluid shapes in graphic design has been around for a while, but I think it's been developing to this point where now it's really trending. And one of the biggest influencers in this area, I think, is Vassian Katro, or also known as Bootcamp. I have one of his posters here. If you don't know about him, definitely worth checking out his work. And he's obviously using these liquid shapes quite a lot in his posters. So I also included a link to his website here on the board. But apart from him, you can see it used in advertisements, like here on this top animation. We can also see it generally used for animation because it really lends itself well for that. We can also see it in photography and fashion with soap bubbles, milk, oil and all kinds of liquid. But you can find examples in pop culture as well, like Billie Eilish's When the Party's Over music video, which is just pure genius, I think. And you can be really creative with the liquid effect. You can even use floating 3D particles like triangles that also almost feels like water when you look at this animation, for example. Here is also a nice example of liquid used in an illustration, but we can also see it used in a more subtle way in black and white for this poster. Here it almost feels like smoke or vapor, but again, it goes with the same style and trend. Now, if you want to create these type of effects yourself, in Illustrator, I would highly recommend to check out my video on the freeform gradient and the gradient mesh tools. So I've done this comparison and I show you what's the difference between them. And from that video, you can learn both techniques. So this is the video here on the Milanote board, but the link is also in the description below. And the other video to check out is this one where I create an abstract shape with the 3D feature in Photoshop, which is cool because if you're not good at 3D, even in Photoshop, you can create something very convincing and 3D looking in a matter of minutes. Drawing and painting is the new photography. What I mean by that is that in the last 15 or 20 years, thanks to digital cameras, photography became one of the most sought after skills and people wanted to learn, get better at taking pictures. But by now, I think it's been oversaturated and everyone reached that point that you can take amazing pictures with pretty much any device that you get your hands on. So the next skill and thing that everyone wants to learn is drawing. And once again, thanks to the changes and improvements in drawing digitally, it is becoming a massive trend. And of course, it's been around for a long while, but thanks to apps like Procreate and now Adobe Fresco, the traditional media style drawing on digital devices is the real trend that I wanted to mention. It's digital paintings like this from Kai Webster that perfectly emulates watercolor in a digital form. And it is now almost impossible to distinguish whether this was originally done on paper with watercolor or whether this is actually a digital painting. And it is not just watercolor, but also oil that can be replicated digitally quite quickly and easily. Not just because of cool brushes, but also brush engines that were developed specifically for this. I predict that we will see even more technical advances in this area. So we will be able to get an even more naturalistic oil paint effect, and all kinds of other traditional media will be simulated and replicated even more closely than what we get right now. So how does this affect your work if you are not into painting or drawing? Well, I have another really cool video on this showing that even from a digital photograph, you can make something like a watercolor painting. So check out this video in which I used Adobe Fresco, but you can even get to similar effects just simply by using Photoshop. 3D illustrations have been around for quite a while, and they've been used in advertisement and in graphic design as well. But I can see a specific trend of using 3D clay or making things look like they are made of clay. Now, you can see a few examples here from Instagram, which again, is clearly a 3D design, but it almost feels like it's made of clay. The same thing with some of these other designs that you can find here, even from Google. And then we have also simple geometric shapes. So this one, as a good example, blocks and cylinders and spheres. Quite a simple minimalist design in terms of using 3D forms, but that's again something I can see being a trend right now. There is even a new game out called Arise, which uses this look or visual aesthetic where everything almost looks like they are made of clay. And if you haven't heard of this game, I highly recommend to check it out because it is just artistically stunning, and also the story is so poetic, so beautiful. And I'm actually thinking of doing a separate video on it just to review it from an artistic point of view. Now, it's worth mentioning an animation film as well on Netflix called Klaus, which is an amazing technological achievement in terms of animation, where the creators prove that 2D and 3D animation can be merged. So the aesthetics of these two styles can be put together into one film. And here is an example of their process of the original 2D illustration without all the lights and treatments. And here is the final rendering with all those additional details added, which makes it look 3D. If you haven't seen this movie already, I highly recommend to check it out. Even just from a technical point of view, you can learn so much, and worth checking out the making of videos on YouTube. Now, if you want to start creating these 3D clay objects and incorporate them in your designs, I would recommend to try out Cinema 4D, on which we have a masterclass on our site. The link is in the description below, but it's also here on the Milanote board. It is definitely one of the best tools to learn if you want to get into 3D design. Now, there's also, of course, another tool in the Creative Cloud called Dimension, with which you can create cool mockups in 3D. You still can't really do modeling, but it does a really good job at lighting and rendering objects in 3D and combining them into different environments, which can be a photograph or illustration. Overlaying and overlapping things on top of each other can make it difficult to read the whole composition, but it also gives some extra depth and make it visually more engaging. So this is again something that has been around for a while, but I can see it more coming up in illustrations, posters, typography, and all areas of graphic design. Now, just like with everything, you can be very creative with this technique, and you can make objects look transparent if it's an illustration, or you can just use line art on top of a photograph or a different style of illustration. You can use two words overlapping each other and just simply by using color and depth make both words legible. Now, of course, this reduces the readability, so it's just simply more harder to read, but makes it more interesting. And that can really help when it comes to grabbing someone's attention to have a look at a book or have a look at a poster. This style or trend also works really well with mixed media. So once again, combining painting with photography and overlaying things on top of each other. It has been around for a while, but it's still going strong, and we will definitely see more of it in 2020. Now, there's a reason to be afraid of machine learning and neural networks taking over jobs, even in the creative industry. But there's also a positive side of it, where it can be used to enhance the creative work that you can produce. And there is actually a free tool which is currently in its beta called Runway ML, which is machine learning specifically for creators like yourself. So I have that link here in the Milanote board. highly recommend to check it out. But there's other examples like this site called Chroma, which helps you to come up with color combinations based on your preferences. So you have to teach this tool what type of colors you like, and then it's going to generate color themes and harmonies based on your preferences. Again, a free tool in its beta at the moment. I highly recommend to check it out. We will see more of these in the future, and Adobe is already doing quite a lot with its Adobe Sensei built into all of the Creative Cloud applications as well. Machine learning can also be used for things like typography, and the difficulty of pairing fonts can be taken care of by the computer. So another sign that I included on the board is called FontJoy, with which you can randomly generate fonts that work well together. And the site works with 3 font combination. So it's the title, heading, and body copy. So we can see 3 fonts here. We can see their names on the left, and then we can start generating new ones. So whenever I click on this, it will continue create these. What I really love about this site though is that you can control the contrast here on the top. So this is the contrast or the difference between the fonts in this combination. So if I increase it to very similar and generate it, then the 3 fonts will look very similar or alike. But if I reduce it down and I set it to high contrast, then we can see that these fonts look much more different from each other. Now on the left side with these locks, you can even set one of the fonts to stay the same and then just generate or randomize the other 2 while keeping this one. Another really cool little game that you can try out to draw together with a neural network is this one here on the board. So here you can pick anything from the top at model. In my case, I chose cruise ship. And then if I start drawing, see how the computer is continuing my drawing. Okay, so if I draw a window, it's going to continue drawing those. Then I can finish this line here on the top, and then it just puts the chimneys in. Highly recommend to check this one out as well, even just to have some fun, but you can also use it to learn to draw, I guess. Now I mentioned that Adobe is also implementing these type of things into Creative Cloud. And one of the highlights of Adobe Max 2019 was Image Tango from the Sneaks, which does an amazing job in combining 2 images. So you could have 2 completely different references, but the neural network will be able to produce new imagery based on these references in completely random combinations. Another really cool tool in development that they showed at Adobe Max was Lightright, which can take some reference photos of an object or an environment, and it can produce new lighting conditions, changing the time of day and the direction of the sunlight. So this was also something really cool, and I'm excited to see how these will be implemented in the Creative Cloud applications. Now on this board, I focused on one specific artist that I think does an amazing job at combining machine learning with art. His name is Scott Eaton, and I've been to one of his lectures. He is a brilliant instructor and an amazing artist, so I highly recommend to check his work out. But what he's doing is he's combining objects and textures with movement and people moving around. But he's also working in developing a body's neural network where he can draw human figures, and the machine learning or neural network is turning those into photorealistic renderings using human anatomy and skin details. If you like this type of stuff, then definitely worth checking out all the other artists listed on this link here on the bottom left of this board. Having the option to switch to dark interface has been a big shift in the industry in 2019, and I'm sure it's going to still continue in 2020. But I can also see another trend in user interface design, and that is soft UI, which is also noticeable generally in graphic design. I would call it soft lights. So here's a really nice example of really soft lights and gradients used, or even in packaging, very pastely soft colors being used. Like always, all kinds of art forms relate and influence each other, and even drone photography can influence graphic design. And because this is another visual style that we can see popping up in all kinds of places where you have these surreal lights in environments. And most of these are actually physically created with drones moving around with lights on them and setting a camera on long exposure. but I've also seen this influencing actual graphic design work. Now at Adobe Max 2019, there was also another really cool sneak that we've seen called Project Glowstick, and that was probably my personal favorite, which I can't wait to get in Illustrator. With this, we will be able to create much more realistic lights simply by just applying lights to objects, or also use objects to block lights. So this will take lighting effects to a whole different level. So we can forget the drop shadow and outer glow options, because once we have this feature, it's going to be just unreal, the amount of things that you can create without using 3D applications and time-consuming rendering. Now, if user interface design is something that you're interested in, then I highly recommend to check out Adobe XD, because it's recently been improved and a lot of new features been added. And by the way, it's completely free. So even if you don't have Creative Cloud, you can download it and use it completely free. The link I included on my board, Let's XD, is a site created by Howard Pinsky, who is doing a brilliant job at helping you to learn Adobe XD and to get into user interface design in general. Before we continue, I just wanted to let you know about our creative membership program. For a small monthly fee, you get access to over 200 hours of Adobe certified online training courses. Master all the tools and skills needed to become a professional graphic designer or illustrator. As a pro member, you will get mentoring from me and my team, access to webinars, student forum, and creative briefs to help you build an outstanding portfolio. Pro members can also download the project files for all of our YouTube tutorials. Sign up at yesimadesigner.com/memberships and start your free trial today. And now, let's head back to the tutorial. Variable fonts are now available in InDesign, Photoshop, and Illustrator since the 2020 update. And if you haven't tried them out already, I highly recommend to do so because it's such a cool feature. Variable fonts have been around for a couple of years, but I think 2020 might be the year where they really take off. And there is a really cool site called VFonts where you can find all kinds of variable fonts and you can test them out and see how they work in the browser. And if you like it, depending on the licensing, you can download it for free or pay for them. Some font designers have been already really creative in coming up ways of utilizing the aspect of working with variable fonts, but I predict seeing even more crazy things in the future, so it's definitely something to keep an eye out for and also try to implement it in your own work. When it comes to visual trends, we also have to have a good understanding of current social trends and movements like the Extinction Rebellion. Now, we can't ignore the fact that climate change is happening, and I would say it is becoming more and more relevant in design and also generally in our culture. So I don't want to influence you in any way, but if this is a cause that you can stand behind, there's lots of platforms which can help you to do that and to use your creativity to help raise awareness on these type of issues. So on the board, I included a campaign called Glowing Glowing Gone that we took part in 2019, and I also done a video which you can find on our channel and also on the board. But there is also this really cool collection created by Glug, which is the world's largest database of protest posters, where you can upload your work and then anyone can access them for free and use it in actual protests. Augmented reality or AR is again something that became much easier to access for creators like yourself. By having Adobe Aero in the Creative Cloud, now you can very quickly create these augmented reality experiences with which you can not only turn a Photoshop file or Illustrator file into an AR experience, but you can also add interactions, animations, and so on and so forth. This is a tool that I'm definitely going to cover in another video, so if you don't want to miss it, make sure you subscribe and also hit the bell icon to get notified whenever we release videos. On the board that I put together, I highlighted the work of an artist called Yaron Vogel, who is creating some really cool AR illustrations using Procreate combined with some coding. So if you haven't seen his work already, make sure you check it out. Again, this might be a feature that soon will be implemented in tools like Procreate. If you feel like AR is too complicated for you, the good news is that you don't need to know any coding for Aero, and you can very easily and quickly enhance the user experience, for example, at a stand in an exhibition where you have all kinds of printed collaterals, but then there's also the virtual or augmented reality experience that users can have. And you, as a graphic designer, with a little bit of added effort, you now can have that additional skill, which can differentiate you from the competitors. Lines are one of the most basic elements that you can use in graphic design, but even they can be really cool if you are creative with the way you use them. There is definitely a trend going on right now, and it will continue in 2020 to use lines, so you can see all kinds of different examples here, from advertisement to product imagery to actual packaging and illustration. And on this board I actually added quite a lot of videos from our channel which can help you to utilize Photoshop and Illustrator in creating these type of imagery. And just to quickly show you a technique, I'm going to use Photoshop and draw a shape here with the vector shape tool, and I'm going to Alt click and drag to duplicate. Now I'm going to select both of them, duplicate again, select all these layers, merge them together with Command or Control E, and then again I can just duplicate it a couple of times, maybe that much is enough, Command or Control E again, and then using the path selection tool, select all, distribute horizontal centers so we get even spacing. Now we can just put it here in the middle and then use the free transform tool, switch to warp mode and start warping it. Already can create a really cool effect. You can almost create 3D looking effects simply by just doing this, but thanks to the new warp features, you can also add split points. So if I select this one, I can add the split point here specifically. I can add another one maybe around here. I'm just going to click. And then if I start moving that around, you can see how this can create very cool effects, and it's quite trippy to look at it, but you can imagine how it can be used to recreate this visual aesthetic that is trending right now. Thanks a lot for watching. Like and share this video if you enjoyed it. Don't forget to subscribe and hit the bell icon to get notified whenever we release new videos. Click on the link on my right and start your membership today to get access to over 200 hours of training courses and personal mentoring by me and my team of creative professionals. Have fun learning, guys, and I will see you in the next one.